What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Total Takedown. This week is UFC Vegas 81. We're going to talk to bottom on this card, and we're going to talk about the overs and the unders. We've already broken this entire card down. Check that out right here live on Pub Sports Radio if you want to take a look at who I think is winning each of these fights. But for this show, we're taking that other angle of trying to find an over or an under that might make more sense than a money line. Make sure you hit that like button for me. Subscribe here to Pub Sports Radio if you haven't already. And let's get straight on into the action. First fight of the night, we've got Yoder taking on Dakot. Total sits at 2.5. Now, with these women's MMA fights, generally speaking, unless you get those absolute monsters involved, we see these chalked up overs for the 2.5s. And that's what we've got here. Over 2.5, minus 350. Makes perfect sense. Yoder has never been finished in her entire MMA career. She is durable and tough as nails. Dakot, also very hard to get out of there. The only thing in this fight that I see as a path to victory where this fight maybe goes under instead of over is those leg kicks from Dakot. Yoder has that tall, lanky, long stance and that frame. We have seen that be something that Dakot can absolutely take advantage of. Her leg kicks are nasty. She looks a whole lot like Justin Gaethje in this weight class. These women are not used to the type of violence that she brings with those leg kicks. And I could see that being the undoing of Yoder. Not because Yoder is not durable, not because she lacks toughness, but because the leg kicks on those long, skinny legs is something that she's just never quite experienced. If that doesn't happen, I mean, maybe there's a chance that Yoder gets the back of Dakot and submits her. But besides that, it's really tough to envision a finish here. So for my way of handling these totals is I need both fighters to contribute to an under before I accept that as a bet. That's my style, that's my model, and I stick to that. In this case, we have the opposite. We've got one fighter in Dakot who could finish. However, both fighters' durability contributes to an over. So I don't really want to play an under 2.5. For the sake of the show, I'll say over 2.5 minus 350 is the pick. But two things. One, we're not laying that price tag. Two, I actually think Dakot might actually be able to finish this thing by KO. So Dakot by KO at plus 425, plus 450, that would be the direction we'd be looking for a prop if we were going to take an under, because that's the only way I really see it happening. Other way, it's just going to be a pass. Next up, you've got Gutierrez taking on Alateng-Haley, and we've got another 2.5 total here. Over is minus 270. The under looks to be plus 210. And it's another one where I have to lean to the over. Alateng-Haley, he's got some serious power in his left hand, but Gutierrez and Haile Alateng, they're both very tough, very durable. Grappling upside here for Alateng. We've got Chris Gutierrez, who likes to avoid the fight. He skips to the outside. Again, we've seen that leg kick TKO coming from him before, but he doesn't really push that pace all that often, and unless he's hitting you with just the perfect spinning back fist, he doesn't really seem to knock people out with his hands either. I kind of see this one being a contested 15-minute battle between these two guys. Again, don't really like the chalked up minus 270, but it probably goes all 15. Melissa Dixon takes on Rena up next, and we've got a 2.5 that is plummeting. The under 2.5 is plus 120. That might not be low enough here. The way Alexieva fights, she comes forward and just tries to force a brawl and bully her opponents until they break. That's her entire fighting style, and that absolutely leads to an under, whether it's her getting finished or her doing the finishing. Melissa Dixon, she's a high-caliber grappler. She's got nothing in the way of striking. It's really tough to see her hanging around on the feet. However, she is smooth as butter on the ground. She can flow. She can take the back. She's got nasty chokes. Her ground and pound is filthy. So both these women absolutely have that finishing upside that we are looking for. I would say under in this spot sounds like a solid spot. Plus 120. It was all the way up as high as I think plus 150 when it opened, and you can see it's crashing. So I do like that under. The next fight is Terrence McKinney taking on Brandon Marlott, and we don't actually have a total posted yet for this one, but with it being a McKinney fight, it's going to be a 1.5, and it's going to be a chalky under 1.5, and I think that just makes sense because he's probably going to nuke this guy, hit him hard to the body. We've seen that cause him problems before, and then if Terrence doesn't get his opponents out of there, he's always helpless as soon as his gas tank runs dry, so I can absolutely see him getting finished even if he doesn't get that first round finish himself. So under 1.5 in every single Terrence McKinney fight until proven otherwise is always the play. UFC newcomer Rena Olivera takes on Tanara Lespoa up next, 2.5 for this women's MMA fight. Under is -125. You can get even money on the over 2.5, which again, this is another one very interesting. We usually see very, very heavy price tags on the over 2.5s. Not when you get these kind of ladies throwing down here. Lespoa is a nasty striker. We saw that in her UFC debut. She's got some decent grappling chops on her as well. Definitely can maybe be exposed there by somebody who's a little more well-rounded, but she's aggressive. Her opponent, Olivera, brand new to the UFC. We don't know a lot about her. The one thing we've seen on her regional tape, though, as a classic Brazilian prospect that finds her way to the UFC, she is very aggressive. Likes to come forward, spinning stuff, Superman punches, reckless aggression, getting in the face of her opponents. She does like to drag people to the cage. She does like to drag them to the ground, and she's got some serious pop behind her punches. Violence makes all the sense in the world to me here in this spot as well, because I do think these two will stand right in front of each other until one of them goes down. Under 2.5, -125. I'd rather be getting a plus there, but I do think we get a finish. Darren Elkins takes on TJ Brown up next. We got a 2.5 where we've got what is close to a pick'em, I guess. Over 2.5, -140. Under 2.5, +110 or so. And I think the under, again, kind of makes sense here in this spot. Darren Elkins, he doesn't really fit my model, right? He's a guy that should say over every single time, but he's 39 years old. He's getting close to the end of the road, whether it's via retirement, whether it's that 40-year-old age where the durability just doesn't hold up anymore. He's taking on TJ Brown, who's a glass cannon. This guy comes forward and he throws heavies. Every single punch he throws is intended to end the fight, and we've seen him tap by a lot of different submissions to a lot of different fighters over the course of his career. He can easily be submitted. Not easily, but you know what I'm saying. Someone like Darren Elkins, I think, can put a pace on TJ Brown, break him, force him to gas, and then finish him. TJ Brown, on the other hand, can absolutely drill poor Darren Elkins in this withered state and drop him and knock him out. I think the under makes a lot of sense here. The only problem is you might have an under at plus money in a Darren Elkins fight, and he just refuses to die, and somehow we find our way to a decision because that's what Darren Elkins does. So there's your warning. If you play the under in this fight, you might be robbed by the mythical durability of the damage. Next up, you've got Cameron Simon taking on Christian Rodriguez. C-Rod in the house. 2.5 the total. Over is -175 and under is +145. Personally, the over kind of makes some sense here, again, just because of the combined durability. Cameron Simon is a nasty striker. We've seen him have real success with heavy hands already in the UFC. He's got an opportunistic submission game. He's got that tight high elbow guillotine that he likes. This kid can finish. Christian Rodriguez, same situation. He's got flowing, smooth boxing. He's got very fast hands. And even though he's more of a touch type of guy, when he does sit down, he's shown that he's got some force behind those hands as well. He also has a very clean, nasty submission game. The guillotine that he had on JSP, more than one occasion, by the way, not many people survive. So I can see either of these guys finishing in this fight, but they're hanging an under 2.5 at +145. That smells of a trap line here to me. I think this is going to be a very closely contested fight. I actually have a half unit on Christian Rodriguez by submission. I do think he finds a way to grab the neck of Cameron Simon. Whether or not Simon taps or finds a way to scramble out of it, that's the big question. I think this is a better money line spot rather than playing the total because either of these guys could finish. Either of these guys could grind. We could be in for a split decision. This is one of those fights where you want to be very careful, and I don't think the total is all that safe. So even though I like the submission, I'd rather pick my fighter and get more money on my prop. I will say under 2.5, definitely not one that I'm betting because of the reasons I just mentioned. Next up, you've got Daniel Lerta, again, taking on Edgar Chyz. Weirdest fight of the night. So Daniel Lerta is 0-4 in the UFC, somehow manages to get a bad stoppage. They call it a draw. They're rebooking it here. So he is 0-4-1 in the UFC to this point. And every single fight that he does not finish early tends to not go his way once the fight gets extended. However, he's taking on Edgar Chyz, a guy who doesn't really step on the gas pedal, a guy who is willing to kind of play the game where you want to play it. You want to grapple? Okay, fine. You want to strike? Okay, fine. He's pretty solid defensively. He's tough. He is durable. But he's not a guy that really gets in your face all that often. So when you've got Daniel Lerta in his last fight, he kind of showed that he was going to pace himself a little bit better. He showed that he was going to come out a little bit more conscious of his gas tank and not literally sprint to chase his opponents down the way he did against CJ Vergara that led him to gassing out and getting TKO'd in the second round. So if he comes out slower, he's got an opponent who might match that pace with him. I know he got caught in the standing guillotine choke, but it was an arm-in guillotine, which you can't really finished standing, so frankly, he wasn't in any danger in that spot. That fight would have continued once they finally broke out of that position. So I think this fight is kind of headed for an over. I already put a degenerate sprinkle on Lerta by decision at 14-1 because I think those odds are absolutely insane. I understand everything about this kid has shown us that he's an under machine, but I actually think that he could try to fight smart in this one, and he might actually try to drag this fight a little bit deeper, minding his P's and Q's, maintaining that cardio, sticking at kicking range where Chyz is going to have a hard time getting a hold of him. Whether or not that works, we'll find out, but I think that's what the plan is. So I actually kind of like this over 1.5 at plus 155 odds. I do think he can survive that first round. I know he's not finishing Chyz in that first round, so if we get that nice slow pace and this thing starts to edge on over, these guys both get a little tired, neither of them either does or has the ability to step on the gas pedal, we could see a sloppy 15-minute fight, and I think the over 1.5 at plus money hits, even though everyone and their mom thinks this will be a 3-minute war. Next up, you've got Michelle Pereira taking on Andre Petrowski, a 2.5 total here. Over 2.5 is plus 115 and under 2.5 minus 145. This one's crazy. It's a little weird because you've got Pereira, who's usually a 170-pounder, taking this fight here. Short notice fill in Andre Petrowski comes in, but he's a 185er. So Pereira's just not cutting weight for this one. What does that do to his gas tank? What does that do to his durability? We're not entirely certain. So this is going to be a weird spot where we've got to speculate a little bit, and we're really only going to know once that cage door closes. I think Petrowski obviously has the grappling chops here. If he gets this fight in his realm on the ground, he has an opportunity to finish Pereira down there. But when it's on the feet, Pereira's going to have a huge advantage. Height, reach, striking, technical ability, everything. And if he does have better cardio, and if he does have more pop behind his punches because of that extra weight, because he doesn't have that awful debilitating weight cut, he might hit harder. And we've seen Petrowski get hurt on the feet before. We've also seen him get tired. He manages to kind of, will himself through that gas issue. But if he's on the back end of a whole lot of punches and can't take a giant muscular monster down, that could spell trouble. I think both these guys can finish. Under 2.5 minus 145, that doesn't seem like a half bad proposition to me here in this spot. Next up, you got Jonathan Martinez and Adrian Yanez. Another 2.5 total with the under being minus 140. I kind of like the under yet again. And the reason for that is Jonathan Martinez is low-key chinny. I know a lot of people are probably going to kind of scoff at that, but we've seen him hurt in so many fights. He's only been knocked out once, but he's wobbled and he's given that wide-eyed moment where he's about to go down. He manages to recover. He manages to be defensively solid, and he hasn't had anybody that's been able to push that when they have the opportunity, when they've got him rocked. Yanez is that guy. Yanez is going to step into the pocket. He's going to look to bang. He's got that big, powerful left hand, and what we've seen from Yanez is he puts himself at risk and may not be the most durable guy either. He got KO'd by Rob Font in his last fight, something that caught a lot of people with their pants down. So I think this fight is going to end up being a high variance striking matchup. It's whether or not one of these guys lands, and I do think they both will land. I like violence yet again. Let's go under 2.5 at minus 140. Viviana Araujo takes on Jennifer Maia. We'll save some time here. Over 2.5 is minus 500. I don't see this going really any other way because I thought Vivi could knock out her last opponent. Jennifer Maia is not chinny in any way, shape, or form. Maia might be able to submit Vivi Araujo. They're both black belts. I don't see that happening. I think we're going to get either a 15-minute striking clinic from Maia or we're going to get a grappling clinic from Vivi. Either way, it goes all 15. Minus 500 is a joke. We're not playing that. Next up, you've got Edson Barboza and Sodiq Yusuff in the main event. 3.5 the total. These 3.5s are weird because I always want to think violence anytime I see a 3.5. But as our guy Gianni the Greek always tells us, if you blindly bet the overs on these 3.5s, you're printing money because anytime they set this number, it just has a tendency to slide over that. Instead of having a 4.5, the 3.5 somehow managed to get there. Barboza's old. This weight cut has got to eventually get to him. He nukes people. He's got crazy power at this weight class. Sodiq Yusuff is a pressure fighter. That's something we've seen melt Edson Barboza in the past before. He also is a chinnier fighter, which, no, I don't want to be disrespectful. He's not like chinny, but he's been knocked out once, and we've seen him staggered and wobbled in many of his fights. Again, similar to what's happened with Jonathan Martinez, no one's been able to follow up and put him away in those spots except for one opponent, so we can't really call him like truly chinny, but I've got a question about the durability, and that's not the guy you want when you're facing off against Edson Barboza. Remember Billy Q? Billy Q was just starting to get the game plan going, and then he got nuked, and that's a guy known for his chin. Sadiq Youssef very much is in danger of getting caught in this fight by Edson Barboza, and the way he fights is going to present a finish for both guys. I've got to lean under here. I don't like the minus 150. I don't like the 3.5, but I've got a hard time seeing this fight get up and over that 15-minute mark. I think we see a finish within those first 3 rounds. That's the total takedown. Thank you all for hanging out. We'll see you tomorrow for the undefeated post-weigh-in show. Bring your tinfoil caps. Let's roll.